All right, I'm just gonna say it. Investing in a sectional title, apartments, flats, clusters is a scam. Yeah. And there's a there's a whole lot of context around this, as to why people invest in sectional titles to start with, and why I think it's a terrible idea for any investor to do so. Yeah. And if you look at the reasons why people generally want to invest in sectional titles, it comes down to a couple of factors for me. One is perceived security. Most of us, whenever we think of complexes, in fact, that's what they used to be called back in the day. Security complexes. We think of security. You know, um, when you think of a sectional title or a complex or an estate, you think that it's safe. You know, and if you're looking at investing in property, why wouldn't you wanna invest in a property which is secured, has security, has cameras, and all of these things. Yeah, that's number one. Number two is, for most people, specifically when you're starting out to invest, there's this perception that it is cheaper to invest in sectional titles, to buy a flat or like an apartment, than to buy a freestanding house. And as a result, it is seen as a lower barrier to entry into property investing. And as such, that's where most people inevitably go. Yeah. And then if you're looking at the third one, third reason why people tend to gravitate towards sectional titles is the fact that um, they are seen to better hold value because of the fact that because they exist within a body corporate, right? They are more likely to be maintained. They are more likely to be taken care of by way of paint, and the garden being done. The general maintenance of it is more likely to be seen as being more consistent, and as a result, the property externally is going to better maintain its shape, so to speak, its value over time. But when you spend enough time investing over time, you start to realize that it's a scam, you know and the reason, if I'm looking at the reasons why I would say, if you can help it, do not invest in a sectional title. The number one reason is this: you do not have the final say in terms of what happens with your property and your investment. you know and when you've spent enough time investing, you realize, like, one of the main reasons for me personally, why I would want to get into a deal, is because of not only where the property is at the moment, but also where the property could be if I did specific things to it. Now, when you consider the fact that the body corporate, for instance, which is a group of you guys together in a complex that own houses in the complex and own the common space together collectively, you know, the body corporate will determine and will dictate what can and can't be done to the property. So if you've got a flat, for instance, you can't just start to add rooms or reconfigure it any way, shape that you want. For instance, if you've got a cluster, for instance, you can't just start erecting buildings in the cluster. You have to get permission, and for the most part, you won't get that permission. In rare circumstances, you may be able to get permission to extend or have an outbuilding, but for the most part, specifically in flats and apartments, you are never going to get, or you are never going to be allowed to make configurations to your property, which is severely going to limit your options in terms of what you can do with the property by way of an upside. So for me, that in itself is enough for me to say, yeah, I don't wanna don't want to get properties. Now, don't get me wrong, I do have properties in sectional titles, but over time, I'm going to start getting rid of these until such a time that I have very, very few or I have none, And a lot of people will say no, but said in certain cases, sectional titles make sense. No. Certain deals work despite being sectional titles. They don't work because they're sectional titles. I don't know if you guys can make sense of that, They work despite being in sectional titles. They're so good that even though they are in sectional titles, they still work. And that is a distinction that a lot of people, I feel, do not make when having a counter argument around this. All right. And number two, which is also very frustrating and annoying to me, is the question of levies. There's nothing more annoying to me than levies. I'm happy to pay rates and taxes because they're usually not that much, and there is some logic in terms of how you go about why you pay rates and taxes. Yeah. And also, if things aren't really working your way, you can put them off until such a time that you have money and then settle them. But this is not the case with levies. You miss one or two payments, they're going to be on your neck. Body corporate is going to be on your neck, So you don't really have a choice. And what is quite annoying is how much you pay for levies, which I think is ridiculous in certain cases, They will go as high as 30%, in certain cases even 35% of what you pay for your monthly bond installments. Imagine that, 35% of what you pay for your monthly installments of your bond goes towards levies that you're not going to get anything in return for. The best thing that you can do, the flip side or the bright side of levies is tax deductions. Because it's such a massive expense, it's going to positively help you when you are doing your tax returns. That's it. Otherwise, it's an expense which you don't even have a say in terms of how it's going to be used. You have a small say, and then a whole lot of other people with different motives have an equal say, and together and collectively, they can easily override what you want. Yeah? Which is why in some cases I've seen in some of the properties I see the trees, the grass being groomed every day, like smaller details. I'm like, why am I spending so much money for somebody to groom plants every day? Not even like once a week, every day, And that's because somebody felt that, or some people felt in the body corporate that the trees and the grass must be cut every day so that it looks perfect or magnifique or whatever. It's quite annoying because this is an investment for you. It's one thing if you live there, but an investment, this is very sickening. It's very, very annoying, right? And on top of that, as if you need the final nail in your coffin. The most consistent expense I've seen go up over and over and over and over again are levies, without doubt, and it usually goes by 10%, regardless of what's happening in the market, regardless of what's happening in the economy, the levies will always go up. And then lastly, of all the properties I own, the incidents that I've had where I had a break-in, I had somebody steal things from me. Guess where that happened? It happened in a sectional title. In a block of flats, apartments, or security estate, right? And you start to wonder, is it really that secure? Because the security guard let somebody in and this person did some damage to people's properties, for instance. And you start to wonder, what if instead of paying 35% or 30% of what I pay towards bond, right, I got a freestanding house, had the flexibility in terms of what I can do with it, had much more space, right? and be able to do whatever I want. I rezone, I reconfigure the property to maximize my return on investment. Yeah. And then if I'm really worried about security, get a response, one of these Chubb ADT type of companies, security companies, for like a fraction, for a couple of hundreds, 80 hundreds, right? And you could even pass that expense to the to the tenant, get the tenant to pay for it. And then the maintenance, you could have somebody come in once, maybe twice a month, or even once a week, and still not spend as much money as you would if you were paying levies. And then have somebody do your maintenance and still not get to that point, And for me, it's dumbfounding that people still prefer to go interstate. And if you focus and you really apply yourself, there are a lot of suburbs where freestanding houses are comparable to security estates or apartments in terms of pricing. It's just a question of you taking the effort and finding them, and you are more likely to find better opportunities as freestanding houses because most of them are 15 years, 20 years, 30 years old, and as such, the amount that's been paid into those bonds is going to give you a lot of room in terms of being able to negotiate a better price, and for me, it doesn't make sense. And granted, there are exceptions, and even whenever I see an exceptional case where it makes sense to buy a sectional title, I would buy it. But I'm never disillusioned about this one fact. The deal was so good that it worked despite being in a sectional title. It never worked because it was in a sectional. That is key. Yeah? All right. That was my rant around why I hate sectional titles. I hope you find value in my frustrations. I still have a couple of these things which I still need to get, right? Hopefully you don't make the same mistakes and you learn from my mistakes and you get to your destinations and grow faster than I can, So my name is Seth. I hope you find value in this, and there's going to be more coming. See you guys in the next episode, next segment, next video, whatever it is, you rest assured that it's going to be coming through. Okay, sharp.